Are you live here?
Yes.
Because for me, I'm off air.
Thank you.
Ah, we're live. Hello, everybody. This is Virtually Connecting. I'm Simon Ensor. I'm over in France. And we're connecting with Eurocall conference, which is over in Southampton in the UK. So we're going to go straight to Southampton because they don't have very many minutes because they're in between sessions. So I'd like you to perhaps introduce yourselves very quickly, and then we'll get the virtual guys to introduce themselves, and then we'll go straight back to you. So perhaps we can start with Joe.
Yeah, okay. So hi everyone. Great to be part of this first virtually connecting session. It's great fun. So my name's Joe Dale. I'm an independent languages consultant. This is based in the UK. I actually live on the Isle of Wight, so I was actually sleeping in my own bed this morning. I had to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to come across to Southampton. But great to be here. It's my second Eurocall. First one was 2011 in Nottingham, and I've seen some very interesting sessions today. And it's also been lovely to meet up with old friends and people that I've been networking with for years, but never met face to face, like Teresa. So that's been an absolute, and she's gone now anyway. She's gone. But that was an absolute delight. So it's been great fun, and I'm looking forward to speaking myself on Friday morning about the MFL Twitterati.
Brilliant. Francesca?
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm Marion Sadou. I've come from China to be here, but I've worked in languages in the UK for many years. What else can I say?
I can say that Marion was one of the first people whose work I read that got me into computer-mediated communication. So Marion, to me, is one of those pioneers that was talking about voice and the importance of voice when I first started. So big influence.
Actually, you were also a big influence.
We were out there together.
Yeah, we were commissioned to do reports by the HEA at the same time. Yeah, and I'm very interested in telecollaboration as well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing and hearing lots of presentations. Unfortunately, I'm going to miss you because we're on at the same time.
Francesca?
Okay, hi, I'm Francesca, and I've just done my presentation, so I'm free now. No, I'm not free. I'm chairing, and I do research on telecollaboration and practice on telecollaboration, and I met Maha Bali, who also created Virtually Connecting through a project through the Solia Connect program that I was involved in. I don't know if you know about that.
Yes, we spoke with Maha about that.
Oh, right. Okay. So Maha's great. Amazing person.
Yeah. So we're waiting for Teresa to come back.
With Steve
Thorne.
The wine's been served.
The way she's going to get the wine. Now,
right. While they're serving wine, perhaps we can go to the virtually people quickly. AK?
Hello, everyone. My name is AK. I am a language geek and general educational technology troublemaker. I work for UMass Boston in Boston in the US.
Parisa?
I like that. What does troublemaker mean?
We're all disruptive.
It's a polymorphous term. It means a lot of things to a lot of different people.
What does it mean to you?
Thinking outside the box, breaking things.
Parisa?
Hi, everyone from Osaka, Japan. It's 2 o'clock in the morning here. My name is Parisa. I'm from Iran. I'm doing my PhD at Osaka University, which is focused on online course design. And part of it is about augmented reality in English language education. I'm also a blogger, and I also try to live outside the box. And my visa application was denied 3 times. And I'm so happy and grateful that I have the chance to get connected to the Eurocall through this platform. Nice to meet you all. Thanks.
Helen?
Hi, I'm virtually connecting today with Simon. I'm Helen DeWard. I teach at a Faculty of Education in Central Ontario, a couple of hours north of Toronto. So it's really nice to be hanging out in the UK today. Nice to meet you all.
Okay, so we'll see if the wine is still flowing over in Southampton.
Hi there, just a quick hello from me, from Martina. So I got up earlier than Joe, 4:30 this morning. I'm going to do a session on, I'm going to take part in a symposium on Twitter for language learning, out of class learning and professional development tomorrow. And Joe is going to be there as well, presenting about, or not presenting, but talking about his school experience, because I think it's important to bridge the different educational sectors as well. One of the reasons why I'm interested here in Eurocall. Okay. Right. And now we are waiting for Steve, and Steve has
has arrived.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Hello, Stephen.
How are you?
Could you give us a quick introduction?
What are we to be? We're having a little trouble with the sound here.
Could you give us a quick introduction of yourself for
Absolutely. Hi. So, Steve Thorne, and I had the great honor and good fortune on my side. I don't know about the audience's side to have presented earlier today at Eurocall, and
100 words per second.
Yeah. The maximum number of syllables per second. Yes, that seems to be my modus operandi, if inadvertent. So I'm a professor at the Portland State University, and I also have a small appointment at the University of Groningen in applied linguistics, which is in the Netherlands. And happy to talk or engage or respond to questions or queries or follow themes or strands as appropriate.
So we streamed from Canada, but they didn't stream. They're not streaming.
Oh,
here.
They're not streaming.
No,
okay.
I didn't see your talk.
Oh, okay. Oh, then
summarize a 1-minute summary.
One minute summary. Yes. I think I took out some of these slides, but do you really want me to do it? I'll do it. You can do it in 30. How about 44 seconds?
Okay, 44 seconds.
So the key.
Taking the time.
Take it. Computer-assisted language learning. So just break it down. Computer-assisted necessarily means mediation. In this case, usually digital or artifact mediation of human communicative informational activity. So I kind of broke down some of the theoretical implications of kinds of mediation. And then the LL in call is, of course, language and learning. And I think both of those concepts also warrant greater attention, scrutiny, a more holistic frame, and need to be brought closer in line with what some of, I think, the interesting empirical and in some cases also conceptual explorations that are contemporarily going on in a variety of fields can tell us. So that's what I tried to do at the beginning of the talk, and then I had a couple of case studies that I hoped would exemplify at least some of these dynamics that I talked about at the beginning more theoretically.
So I have a question.
Oh yeah, and Fran's going to tell what I really said.
Okay, go on, Fran.
Really, what I found was interesting was which I've heard from other people speaking, is the idea of language as being a constructed system, and the way we use language isn't absolutely, especially online, isn't monolingual. It's not this kind of rule-regulated system.
Yeah.
Vero?
Yeah, exactly. I think
Languaging.
Exactly. I think the idea of language being something that's rule governed and should be taught as a system that is rule governed is not a good, as the philosopher John Searle would describe it, direction of fit to the actual empirical condition of learning and using language, with the fact that we inherit it historically because we didn't invent the language we use. We inherit it across generations of human populations that use some sort of semiosis to communicate with each other. And neither does it take good account of what we understand vis-a-vis the processing, real-time processing that happens in a recombinatory semiotic system like language when we're talking about either comprehension or production of language or learning language. So I think we could better attune to the empirical specificities of language learning and language use that would then help us create more informed, more powerful, and more effective pedagogical innovations and interventions, in my view.
Teresa had a quick question for you. Teresa, Teresa had a question for you. She's gone.
She's gone now.
I'm going to try and translate the question as best I can. So her question was, how can teachers learn, because you talked about pedagogy, how can teachers learn from this and use this in practice? Because this is something as a working teacher I'm really interested in.
Oh, absolutely.
He said it.
It's kind of,
Do you want to repeat your question, Teresa, with the wine?
Are a gentleman and a scholar and a red wine purveyor. Is this a question for me, or is it a group question?
Repeat your question, Teresa.
yes, I'm hoping you've got to know each other. Sorry, I've been around in the background.
Yeah, no, thank you, Teresa. No, you're doing great.
Just arranging to get people a drink. The drinks reception obviously is going on, and there's lots of activity in the background here. I thoroughly enjoyed Steve's keynote, but as I came out, I had a quick chat with Joe, and we went, yeah, but how does this translate in the classroom?
Yeah.
And, what does it mean? I love the rewilding image, but yet we can have structured
unpredictability.
Structured unpredictability, which is kind of what we've been doing with Clavier for some years.
Yeah.
Maybe not so structured in many cases, maybe just unpredictable. But I thought it was a great image, and it was kind of, what if within your classroom or at a particular point in time, this intervention happens, these people get involved in the discussion it takes us. And it took me back to a chance sort of intervention that I had with my French beginner.
We've lost Southampton.
Where we had the Work Out Loud week coming in and having a conversation and getting my students to introduce themselves in French to a visiting business person. These sort of things have lots of potential, but for disaster as well as for good as well as all sorts of things can get opened up. But that is why I wanted to ask Steve that question, because I'm sure he'll have lots and lots of other examples. And there was so much to unpack there. And we have so many constraints, as you know, within
absolutely
more in schools where Joe is working with school teachers all the time.
I tried to be explicitly clear that I do understand that you can't just have pie in the sky. Anything goes, and I'm not advocating for that. I mean, but I do think that there are some. So here's the problem, for example, with a rule-based approach to teaching grammar, for just to take one point. It doesn't hold up very well. As like the linguist Paul Hopper describes it, as texts expand, or as you look at more and more examples, the rule applies to fewer and fewer percentage of the cases, right? And this is a real problem. And this is, of course, the more high frequency the construction or the verb, the lower probability it has of being regular, and following quote unquote rules. It's an exception, right? So it seems as though both from a cognitive science, a learning science, and a linguistic perspective, that constructions and learning formulaic sequences with flexible slots is fundamentally the way human communicative activity works. We do the same thing a lot, right? There are structured ways to teach patterns of languaging, just as there are structured ways to teach rule-governed approaches to understanding grammaticality. And there are some things that hold up better than others, like subject-verb agreement. That's a pretty handy one to have in your back pocket, right? A plural
not
is. Well, I guess but fundamentally, human learning is about exemplar-based expansions. And then you overgeneralize and you run into problems, and then you need to learn kind of a new core construction, possibly with flexible slots or extensibility. And so, to my view, the people who are closest to the linguistics of this have shown that construction grammar and usage-based linguistics, it's called, is a much more robust and accurate descriptor of human communicative activity than is rule-based approaches to grammar that root themselves in other theories or approaches like Chomskyan approaches, etc. So I think we should align our pedagogical interests with the best science that we have. Now, it's non-trivial. We have a lot of work to do with materials development and other kinds of things. But I do believe this is the path forward to wed together and bring together the best science we have of how people learn and of how language is actually structured and the processing constraints we have as these sorts of organic organisms. And then we think about ways to accelerate learning or development, pedagogically mediated engagement, or breaking the routine of expected classroom activity with the structured unpredictability idea, or, you know, so yeah, I think it's, and it's very hard work to do, mind you. I think I did get some feedback today that I think some people were not displeased necessarily, but maybe
disrupted,
whelmed, if not maybe disrupted, if not overwhelmed by some of the theoretical implications. Because these are, you know, good science and good description that's happening in the last 5 or 8 or 10 years really subvert many of the ways that we naturally understand language, grammar, communicative activity, rule governedness, all those sorts of things to work. So,
but the other thing that you said also, I think was really important about was the E. Was it 4 E's, 5 E's of conditions, the embodiment about language learning being a whole body experience,
it's not just
feelings and emotions and
the limbic system. Exactly. I mean, that's the key thing too. I mean, you know, and this is something that you get straight from cognitive neuroscience, like Damasio's work, for example. If you want citations, I have them. The limbic system, our emotionality, is a and certainly the ways in which we affectively engage with conspecifics, with others of our species, right? I mean, and we so often just sort of don't even talk about your work, critically framed online and cultural education. That's you know, an exception though. I mean, typically I think, you know, conflict and emotionality is not seen as relevant to many university classroom contexts. Obviously there are exceptions, but that's a critical part of the human cognitive faculty that just then is sort of treated as though it's not there at all. So that's a real problem, and that is an area where our models, our understanding, our representations of language, of cognition, and of kinds of learning opportunities are anemic or constrained.
Anemic, yes, because anemic, you don't have the energy to do things.
Right, exactly.
It's taking away your access to oxygen.
But it's a lot of work, and we all have these huge forces of historical inertia behind how we do things in schooling, you know, conventionally rendered. And I mean, I spend a lot of time with educators and also directly with students, of course, and at different levels, like in the Alaska Project with younger kids and at university with university-age kids. And I understand. I mean, you know, sometimes the biggest resistors to pedagogical innovation are the students.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, you go around like, it's freedom and agency, and you know, we really want you to kind of expand your horizons. Like, so how am I being graded on this again? You know, or just tell. I love this one. Just tell me what I need to know.
Exactly.
You know, and I get it, because that's how they've been trained for years. If they're university age, they've been trained for 12 or 14 or 16 years to be asking precisely those questions, because we have an entire educational system based on exchange value dynamics. Tit for tat, quid pro quo, I'll do this for you and you give me a grade, which allows me to move up to the next level or pass the course or graduate with a degree, rather than the use value of learning and education, which is how do you transform yourself across time to become a new kind of person, right?
Steve, what I liked in your keynote was the idea of experimenting and the idea of unpredictability. So just play with the language. Just see where it takes you. So it doesn't always have to have a purpose right from the start. You don't have to necessarily reach a particular goal. Just sort of experience it. And this is what you said, Francesca, about the embodied learning as well. I think that's very important. So see this as a whole body experience, and try to see where it really takes you and what you can get out of this, and not just isolated, but really in collaboration with other people. And I found it very interesting that structuralist approaches as well. So actor network theory,
Mm-hmm.
and I also saw, sorry Simon, the rhizome.
The rhizome.
Yes, it was there. It was there. It was there in one of the slides, and I noticed, and
I can't believe you missed the rhizome, man.
No.
Make sure that we get them in the blog post.
Oh.
It was just the taking the focus away, and this is particularly challenging for schools.
Yes,
from
for
the,
sure.
from the content to the process, and we always have this sort of baby and bathwater cycle all the time.
Yeah.
When I was teaching in higher education, which is 15 years ago now, in secondary education 15 years ago now, I had the freedom to say, do you know what, we're going to go outside and we're going to do this, and we're going to do something totally off the syllabus and off plan, and it works. It makes a difference. It disrupts the usual dynamic.
And I do think it's not a baby with the bathwater, everything out. I mean, there are many things that are really well done in the artificial, not used in a negative sense at all, in the artificial, rarefied context of a classroom space. So if you're familiar with some of the work, believe it or not, I know a little of this research on how you create a fishing lure. Right? So if a little fish that other fish like to eat has a small red dot right here, what does a fishing lure look like? Has a huge red bulb in that location, right? Because it makes super salient what the predator fish is looking for, right? So the predator fish is swimming around and it's looking for something that identifies the target as something yummy to eat, right? So much of what we do and do well in classroom contexts involves making super salient, super visible, visibilizing aspects of the semiotic system or a literacy system, or and in many cases, people sometimes get confused about the kind of structured unpredictability or take some risks and think, oh, so anything goes, or formal accuracy is no longer important. Could not be further from the truth. If you're writing a cover letter for a job you want, you better bet that the expectations for perfection and accuracy in the historically prescriptivist approach to language, like there is a right and a wrong, you want to do it that right way, using that power genre of language. So I do think that that's all very, very important. And reciprocally, we also need to teach other registers and maybe other genres that have extreme high frequency, and for some young people, but also maybe even old people like us, have some use value in our own communicative expression in digital environments where if you used formal language and caps and all appropriate grammar for traditional writing documents in, say, a text chat, you'd be stupid, or inappropriate. Or
if you use too much punctuation, you're old.
For example,
you're old, too much
that's
punctuation.
right.
That's what Mike could tell me.
Yeah.
Why'd you put all these?
Yeah, exactly. And yet there is a place for knowing that. So when I talk to my kids about it, I'm hopeless in this way because I literally talk to them exactly like this. Like, all of your utterances should be designed with the recipient in mind. Recipient design. It's an old conversation analysis idea or ethnomethodology. When you're creating a communicative gesture of whatever kind, you should have a sense of what the target and purpose for that gesture is. I'm not saying you should, overly constrain yourself or, but I mean, you should be aware of appropriacy and the power relation with your interlocutor. And if you're asking a supervisor at work or a professor a question and you're a student or an employee, you might want to frame that differently than if you're making a similar request to, say, a peer or a younger sibling. And it's just natural. I mean, Michael Tomasello, who's one of the leaders in usage-based linguistics, has come out very clearly and said, pragmatics, language use as social action, is the core of the human condition vis-a-vis communication. Not form per se, although form is pragmatics in a way, right? Making those choices. And, we have it pretty easy in English, but many languages with at least a a two-tier pronoun system, second-person pronoun system. Hindi has 3 or 4, really, you can, and you have to always be making these decisions. Japanese, obviously, with Keigo and things, you have a much more tremendously elaborated hierarchy. So, that stuff is, so form, serving, language use as social action, critically important, right? But also highly flexible. It's not just, the formal genre register that is important. There are also all these other ways that we use language that can be emotionally riveting and fully engaging and things that might be not those formal genres. So we need to think about how to be more inclusive about what we teach.
So you were asking for fluid systems, really? Fluid systems to be used.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in liquid modernity, we should have fluid systems. Liquid modernity. Sorry,
liquid modernity.
That's my phrase of the day.
Yeah.
Liquid modernity. Cheers.
Cheers. Liquid modernity. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I hope it's French. I hope it's French.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have no idea, and we're not fussy at this point.
Yeah, we're not. It has already been a long day. Yes. But a good one. Wow.
Parisa, would you like a question or AK?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Parisa or AK, questions?
Yeah, sure. If possible, I'm interested to know more about the keyword that I found in your abstract, social justice, because recently this is my concern, and I'd be grateful if you could about social justice regarding our pedagogy.
Sure.
Thank you.
Just one. We're having some noise trouble. Just 1 second.
Okay.
What is that?
We're doing some demo.
It's,
We've only got
can I type it?
Okay.
It's
Sorry, there's a parallel meeting going on just in the next room, and they told us that we were being too loud. Sorry. So look,
You have to be pragmatic.
Yeah, we have to be pragmatic. Thank you for the question, by the way. So social justice, I think, should be at the center of our concerns. And it depends on how you want to define social justice, but basically access to opportunity and not preclusion from participation or engagement based on arbitrary dimensions such as race, ethnicity, biological sex, chosen or performed gender, or any of these dynamics, certainly religious or spiritual conviction. I mean, they're political persuasion. These criteria should not be capable of precluding access to full participation in the kinds of democracies and institutions that we have now that only that only kind of exist for this sort of full participation. Sorry, we're getting all types of trouble here. Sorry.
Thank you so much.
So,
the wine sponsors are speaking.
Okay.
We're missing the display.
Oh dear.
The other thing is we're doing this in the wild now.
Yeah.
So anyway, so the examples in my project, we have some examples of just English language learning and English language learning materials. But the content and the conditions within which we present these materials include topics and kinds of social identities that might sometimes be considered either marginal or disenfranchised or non-mainstream, etc. So in the United States, as you would well know, we have a rather horrific political environment, which is highly restrictive and very problematic in a variety of ways. So we've intentionally highlighted recent immigrants to the United States and their use of the English language as non-native speakers, quote unquote, but as highly proficient and capable communicators, as examples of precisely the kind of target that is a reasonable target for people who are English language learners to go for. And this includes people who come from various parts of the world, who are either ethnically or sort of sociolinguistically, obviously not mainstream American, and to routinize or make everyday and routine these sorts of identity dispositions. We also have, for example, a gay male who is advocating in this very casually, just saying, yeah, and I think we should have gender neutral bathrooms. And I think that's important because as a gay male, it sort of seems like the next logical step as we move forward to not making as big a deal about performed gender and just be more inclusive. And it's just very casual, not a heavy-handed thing. We have an American who is a Muslim who talks about, in a very natural way, the fact that the ways in which gender interaction happens across various kinds of culturally organized activities inside and outside of the Islamic traditions is something that one should be able to negotiate and work through and smooth and seamlessly transition between, and that, you know, that's that. And so using English language learning as an opportunity to engage in the ways in which we can understand, again, these social identities as a regular and everyday part of being a full participant in contemporary American society, right? So there's a sort of subcurrent of a social justice agenda with all of these sorts of representations. And we hope that they're constructive. And we hope that through processes of making visible and in fact, normalizing and just making kind of everyday the fact that you can be a variety of different kinds of identities or persons and still be included as an example of what a good English language using communicator can look like, can sound like, and that's been, I think, a very exciting project for us. You know, and it's a small thing, but I think it's a significant one.
Sure, thank you. Thank you so much.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course, but sometimes things don't work out, you know. I mean, yeah. And then I think teacher agency it's really important.
Yes.
I want to be an agent of change. So that's why I personally, I've started blogging. Any other suggestions?
Has that been helpful? I mean, do you have a readership? And
yeah,
that's excellent.
Yeah. Or I talk about these issues to my students.
Yes.
It's kind of difficult or it's kind of hard, but I talk to them. And sometimes I really feel that they're communicating, you know, with me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're so in a
this teacher agency recently is really important to me.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that that's a really a wonderful thing. I mean, fundamentally, until people get to know one another as both types and also as individuals, until that they come to know each other as individuals with personalities and preferences and you know, different kinds of expressions of what that personality can mean vis-a-vis different topics or whatever. You know, it's easy to just continue with stereotypes or prejudices or these sorts of things. But once that interpersonal dimension comes to the fore, and it could be asynchronously through blogging, it could be in direct you know, face-to-face communication with students, then I think those barriers at least are mitigated somewhat, if not removed entirely, because then they like you for who you are, not the fact that you may have a history that relates to Iran, or that you're Muslim, or any of these other things, right? Or that you're female rather than male. I mean, you know, these sorts of dynamics are not, it's non-trivial. I mean, I think you should be all the things you want to be, and other people should be able to appreciate both you, but also other people who differ in different kinds of ways, for the ways in which they can contribute to kind of a greater wellness, a preferred future, right? But yeah, I mean, it's so just engaging with these sorts of issues, and Fran has done a lot of that in her work. Engaging with these sorts of issues, I think, is really important.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
There's a question. Someone's got, Apostolos has got a question. Steve can't read without his glasses.
Yes,
These are
exactly.
mediating artifacts.
These are mediating
we
artifacts,
cannot communicate without mediating artifacts.
I wrote in the text.
Okay,
I have no questions. I'm just happy to be Eurocalling for a very long time. I was reading Recall religiously when I was working on my master's project. The one thing that came to mind is sort of the metaphor of language as an open educational resource. So you've got the 5 R's of OERs and repurposing, reusing, and redistributing. I was thinking, interesting. I never really thought about language as an OER, but it kind of falls into that realm.
I love that metaphor. That's right. I mean, in a way, right? I mean, look, I mean, we inherit language from prior generations. I mean, of course you can neologize and these sorts of things, but fundamentally, language is a historical resource, and we're just standing at the very edge of history all the time, inheriting all the kinds of things, including the changes that all languages undergo across historical time. So in a way, looking at language as a repurposable OER is kind of a cool idea. I haven't actually heard that formulation before, but I actually really like that. I think that's great.
One of the random things. Something might come of it, something might not, but I thought I would throw that out.
And you heard it here at Virtually Connecting First.
Yes, exactly. We heard it here. Language is an OER. Communicative engagement as articulable OER resources. Yeah, I love that. That's really cool.
I guess that's what it means to be a troublemaker.
Simon,
Do you guys?
I'm kind of aware that we've kept these people away from their second glass of wine for a little while. So is there anything else you would like from us, or should we release these people back into the wild?
Bathroom.
Go to the bathroom.
Sorry. That's the wild.
That's the wild.
Final question then. Any questions? Well, I have one. Can you have learning in the wild with a teacher beside you?
Sure, why not? I mean, I think teacher mediation is massively important. Look at all the work that has happened in online intercultural exchange. Tandem learning, at least in its strictest sense, I mean, is pretty much, participant to participant without a lot of teacher mediation. I know tandem learning is purpose in other ways, but OER or telecollaboration, I think one of the great things is teacher mediation that amplifies learning possibilities. This is the whole thing about learning in the wild, or about the rewilding bit. You just want some of that in there, but teachers can do an amazing amount of work. As I've always said with technology makes teachers more necessary, not less necessary. They make certain things visible.
He's like, I love this man.
No, I mean, but I really believe it. I mean, this is my firm conviction. I learn things from people all the time. I want my mediation, So if I'm visiting a new speech community, or I'm trying to learn something that I'm not very good at, I would love to have an expert by my side, not to do everything for me and infantilize me like some teachers do. I've done in my bad teaching days, right? But I want support, and I want someone to say, hey, you're trying to apologize in Spanish. It's actually not a speaker-oriented strategy. It's a hearer-oriented strategy. You discúlpame. You don't lo siento in Spanish. I mean, you can say lo siento if someone died, but if you bump into someone, you don't say lo siento. You say discúlpame. And in English, it's just the opposite. You say, oh, I'm sorry. You can say excuse me. Brits do. But that's their problem. That's not my problem as an American. That was a joke. You know, but I mean, you know, so, you know, it's good. And so somebody by my side could say, hey, yeah, dude, you know, like the words are right and the meaning is wrong. The social actions are not matching what would be expected with an expert speaker's hope for this sort of reasonable interaction to play out well. So I'd love to have someone around to help me with that. Teachers are as important or more important than ever. The way we teach, the way we pedagogically mediate, and potentially, of course, amplify learning opportunities. I think that's at the fore. I mean, it's, you know, we don't have instructed learning environments for no reason. They're efficient, they're effective, they're scalable. We need more of them. We need better trained teachers. We need better trained teachers with powerful technologies and cultures of use associated with those technologies that can really, I think, transform what it is we do and accelerate the kind of learning outcomes that we're capable of achieving. I mean, in my view.
Yeah, I agree.
We're 100% behind you, Steve. Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Thank you very, very much, all of you guys. We don't want to stop you from getting back to another refill of that wonderful wine. We have a lot to think about.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. Oh, yeah. Especially for you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.